Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back to some more bite-sized business advice. And we got one of those episodes that's just going to maybe shake up the way you think and probably piss you off a little bit, but that's okay because that means we're moving ahead and we're getting you out of the rut that you find yourself in business. We're going to talk about how your network is not your net worth. Did we trigger you already? Okay, let's unpack this. I have a very special guest with me. Going to break this down. Mike Vaquera, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Brandon, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Okay, so I piss people off. I need you to clean up this mess for me. Unpack this saying. We've all heard your network is your net worth. And we got to talking a little bit before the recording here, and you broke it down for me, and I'm on your side. So help me understand why that is not true.
Yeah, I mean, in today's world, networking isn't difficult, right? I think we've broken down the walls, and not to knock it of BNI and all these other groups. And obviously with LinkedIn and anything you do online, it's very easy to get proximity to success, right? And I think that's where the root of that saying is like, hey, man, if I can get close to wealthy individuals, and people say this all the time too, which is one of the sayings I hate, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I'm like, okay, that's great, but then what are you doing with that, right? So many people go to the conventions and the events, and I always say they're either fans or groupies more than they are entrepreneurs. And a lot of people identify themselves as entrepreneurs, and they go to every ClickFunnels conference and every Tony Robbins conference, but they're not asking questions. They're not meeting people when they're networking. They're not saying, hey, what can I learn from you? How can we do business together? How can we grow together? They're not really understanding how to leverage those relationships, and then they become these sort of casual encounters that don't really mean anything. And today, I think networking is more about actionable items and questions. So, and not always trying to sell to people, but saying, hey, what do you do? Who do you look to work with? You know, how can I help you meet more people? I always say, and I kidded around before we came on air about my sweater, I got a guy. I always want to be the person that's got a guy. So most people come to me and say, hey, can you connect me with this person? Can you connect me with that person? And that's really what networking is. That's how you grow your value in a network, not by just proximity to success and just listening to what people say. That's like this much of it. The bigger part of it is taking what you've learned and turning it into action.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly, because you meet so many people who they just want to regurgitate knowledge. Like you gave the example of going to a Tony Robbins or a funnel hacking live, and it's like, I was at that event, I learned X. And it's like, okay, first of all, what did you do with X that grew your business and helped you? And part two is you were surrounded by 5,000 people. Who else did you meet and what are you doing with them? And often the answer to both of those questions is nothing, which just continues to blow my mind. So full transparency here, this podcast, the Harmonious at Lunch, came out of me realizing I did not have a big enough referral network. It was, I had all these connections on social media and LinkedIn, and I couldn't speak to really what people were doing, and I couldn't refer people to them because they were, air quotes, connections, but I didn't know anything about them. And I wanted to deepen those relationships, actually create referral partners, and have a network of people who I knew what they were doing, they knew what I was doing, and we could work together and help each other win. It sounds like that's the approach that you like to take in business. Sure. Am I mishearing that?
No, 100%. And I think you hit on a key word there, relationship, right? So many of us want to develop connections and not relationships. I'd rather get to know you about your family, what makes you tick, what you enjoy, what you like, what you don't like, and then also learn what you do for business, because that wholeheartedly can make a big difference in what you do. I mean, if you ask most people who are connected to me on social media or know me, they probably couldn't tell you what I do for a living. But they could tell you that I smoke cigars and that I drink scotch and that I like steak and that I like my family and that I go to Dolphins games and that I'm Italian. Like the things that make me, a lot of people understand, which is why they, obviously, once again, know, like, and trust. That's who you do business with. So I develop relationships, and I've had plenty of people come to me and say, I don't really know what you do, Mike, but I think you need to talk to my friend because they're trying to do this in business. And, we should go out and grab a cigar. We should go out and grab a steak, or we should go out and grab lunch. It's about the relationship, more than it is the connection. Once you got the relationship, it's much easier to refer people or ask the question or be like, hey, Bob, I know you're in personal finance, if and I'm not quite sure what that is, but I know my friend's struggling financially. Can I refer you? Or, if some people are more defined realtors, landscapers, different things like that. But it's more important for me to develop the relationships and know what makes people tick and be able to say, hey, not only do I think you should work with this person, I think they're a good connection for you just to know, because I think you two would really hit it off.
Yeah, that's amazing. So this show is about moving your business forward, right? We find ourselves in this rut sometimes, which I've said earlier in the show, of just focusing so much on our own business. And
Mhm.
you actually, I forget the term. I'm going to ask you to say it again, but that 500,000 to 3 million in revenue. What did you call that area of business? Because I loved it.
The second worst place you could be in business.
Yeah, which is so true. I've been there
First
with my
place is
last.
broke.
Yeah, yeah, obviously, but I love that term because it's so true. I found myself there in my last business, and it was you're focused all in on this thing. You have employees, you have revenue. You're probably not making the money you want to, or if you are, you don't have the time that you want to. And it's this delicate balance where it seems like at any time, if something falls, everything falls.
Sure.
So we want to talk about, yeah, we've dispelled the myth, your network is your net worth, but what do we do with this now? Like, how do we use this to grow our businesses, to really get out of that second worst place to be in business? How do you help people through that transition?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is too, and usually if you're an entrepreneur or you're a business owner, or even some people in their day-to-day job, if you're really passionate about what you do and you really love what you do, odds are you're working too much, right? There's very few people that don't like what they're doing, they're overworked. If you like what you do, you're probably working too much. So the first thing is looking at it like, okay, I get that, but what can you give up? You know? And I always give the 80-20 principle. Who could do it 80% as good as you that will give you back 20% of your time? And that's really important to look at. What are the things that you could start to hand off? Sometimes it's just a budgeting thing. Sometimes it's a financial thing. Hey, I'm doing all my own bill paying, or I'm doing my own bookkeeping, or I'm posting my own social media, or whatever it is. You have to sometimes look at the simple things that you could give up, because the odds are the reason you're struggling is you're doing too much. And we have to start to unload some things off your plate.
Yeah, and I want to talk about this too because this is a topic that comes up a lot. Sometimes I agree with what people say, sometimes I don't. I
Sure.
love that principle, and I want to hear your take on this. I love cutting my grass. I know that has nothing to do with my business at all,
I
but it's
love
one of
it.
those things that, quite honestly, I don't see myself, no matter how much money, how successful I get, I don't see myself giving that up. So tell me about that balance between how you feel about stuff like that, or cooking your own food, or whatever it is that you love, in terms of actually fueling your business rather than the one of the first things that you should give up.
I love that you brought that up, because my wife and I, when we first got married, lived in an apartment, and I could not wait to get my own house, to cut my own lawn and have my wife bring me a glass of lemonade. And there's two things I realized. And then, a few years later, we finally bought our own house. I think it was like the second or third day we're in there. Went to Home Depot, bought all the stuff I needed to cut my lawn. And I'm out there cutting the lawn. I'm doing it. I learned two things that day. I don't like to cut the lawn, and I don't like lemonade. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at all this crap I bought, and my neighbor goes to me, he goes, I got a guy that cut the lawn. I'm like, how much? He goes, $25. And I'm looking and I'm like, $300 mower, $100 edger. I'm adding everything up, and I'm like, so for about a year of lawn cutting, I could pay somebody to cut my lawn for the price I paid for all this crap, right? And I went, returned it all, and I've had a lawn guy ever since, right? I think I wouldn't even say I've cut my own lawn ever, because I think the first time I did such a terrible job. But to your point, you enjoy that. You know what I mean? So for me, in my life, in my business, and I outsource everything. Like I got a guy to clean. I pay a guy to clean my garbage cans. I mean, that's how bad I am. Because for me, time is valuable. Though I got 4 kids, and less about work time. As I've learned as I've gotten older. Today's actually my 44th birthday. I've learned
Congratulations.
that. Thank you. I've learned that giving stuff up that you don't enjoy doing is important, right? And paying someone else to do it is not a loss. That's the first thing, right? I think a lot of people see that as, yeah, but you should cut your lawn whether you like it or not. It's the struggle, it's the pride. Listen, there's stuff, if you hate doing it in your business, offload it. If you like doing it, like you like cutting your lawn, and it gives you kind of like, maybe mental clarity and allows you to think, keep doing it. Not a problem. It's not a waste of time for you. And once again, this goes back to the networking thing. Just because I say that, and maybe I'm, you may see me as successful or where I want to be. And I'm not saying I am, but a lot of people hear a guru say something or hear somebody say something like, oh, that guy doesn't cut his lawn. And he pays somebody to cut his lawn and wash his garbage cans. And I pay a guy to come to my house and cut my kid's hair. That doesn't mean that's going to work for you, Brandon, right? You have to decide what works for you and your business and what you're passionate about. If you're in a business and you love posting to social media and replying to all the comments, don't outsource that. But if you hate the accounting, outsource the accounting. If you love the accounting and hate the social media part, switch it. You got to outsource the things that you don't enjoy doing so you could double down on the things you do enjoy doing.
Yeah, I like that advice too, because it's in line with what you're going to do best. If you think, or if you follow some guru who says, you have to, let's use me as the example. You can't cut your lawn. It's a waste of an hour and your hourly worth is way more than what you could pay somebody. Cool. The rest of my week's going to be miserable because I don't have that hour to myself of that thinking time in nature, cutting the lawn in the sun, all that stuff. That fuels me. Let's bring that back to business. I don't know that people understand that, because when they're in that range, like we talked about, that $500,000 to $3 million, and they're the founder, the owner, they think they have to be the CEO. So help me unpack this, because everything you just said goes against them being the true CEO. Sure. Because if you love social media, are you the CEO? How do you help people with that transition of saying, this is what I'm doing because it fuels me and it helps the business, and I need maybe somebody else to lead it, or I need to put that plan in place to have somebody else lead the company? Help me unpack that.
I mean, and the important thing to remember too in business, there's no absolutes, right? It varies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sure, like if you own a pizza place and you're trying to franchise it and open up 30 different restaurants, maybe spending less time on social media, even though you enjoy it, is something you shouldn't be doing. You need to be focusing more on, okay, how do you scale, or how do you make more pizzas, or whatever it is. I think it depends on the task and how it affects the growth and scale of the business, right? And that's the first thing. And then what's your goals with the business? Once again, too, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with $100,000 business or a $500,000 business or $1 million business and taking home maybe 10% of that revenue and you're happy. If that's it, then you don't have to make these drastic changes. If the goal is like, look, I don't like my $1 million business and wish it was a $10 million business, then it's looking at, once again, it's like, I think first thing you always do is offload the things you don't like to do that don't impact the day-to-day operation or quality of your product or business. The second thing you look to offload is the things that you maybe enjoy that affect your business, but really someone else can do. And the things that you have to go all in on are the things that are crucial to the success of your business or your company, right? Once again, I'll use the pizza maker as the example. If you're the master pizza maker and everyone's coming in because Mike's making that pizza, you can't have Tony or Jimmy or Johnny make the pizza maybe, because people are dependent on you. That does have a cap. That's fine. But whatever it is, you got to look at what you could outsource. There's one client I work with, Lisa Cullum. She's a author of an educational writing company. She's outsourced everything, but the curriculum, that's what she focuses on: writing it, editing it, making sure it does good. And people see her as a successful businesswoman, but she'll tell you, I don't touch the business aspect of the business. I focus on the curriculum, but I put other people in place that can focus on the business part. Now, she also does have a curriculum team, and she's grown that and given up more and more, but she always focuses on the core thing, which is the curriculum. That's the curriculum. That's the core of the business. Hardcore Italians, who makes a sweater, another one of my clients. Mike Karyosha, 29 years old, created a multi-million-dollar e-commerce business. And the reason that he did that is because he focuses on the product. He still focuses on product design. He outsources a bunch of other stuff, fulfillment, some of the accounting stuff, things like that. But he focuses on, and he likes doing the media and the ads and things like that. He focuses on that. So once again, it just all depends on, where you are, what you want to do. I work with a cigar company. I was just on with the CEO the other day. And he's like, hey, we want to start speaking at convention events. I'm like, who's going to speak? I go, do you want to be the one speaking? He goes, no, Mike, you need to speak. He doesn't even want to be front and center. He goes, I want to focus on product and operations. That's what he loves. It varies by business. There's no absolute, but you just have to really be honest with yourself. Is what I'm handing off and what I'm taking on truly helping my business grow? And that's the harder struggle, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at too, because, well, you said it perfectly. I always assume, and shame on me, that if you're listening to this podcast, you do want to get to that next level. You don't want to, if you're happy with where you're at right now, maybe you just want to hear from Mike, and he's a really cool guy and he's got a guy, and that's awesome. But I assume that most people want something else. They either want to work less. What I find is they want to work less or make more, or both.
Right.
So in order to get different results, you have to do different things, which is why I asked that questions. But yes, the foundation of that is there's no one right way because every human being is different. For your curriculum client, I love that you said, I run into this a lot, that she doesn't do the business, air quotes. She does what she's best at. And that is what I find that holds back most people in that area because they think they have to do both
Yeah.
and they're spread too thin. So when you're working with clients, when you first go in, how do you identify with them, or really not, because it's probably very clear for you, how do you help them see what their biggest gift is in terms of the core competency of the business and themselves, and then start to push everything else off their plate?
I mean, in a simplistic way, it's really just conversations. I like to do a SWOT analysis always with everybody in the organization. I mean, the first thing I do, especially whether you got 2 employees or 20 employees, I talk to everybody, and I really do a SWOT analysis with everybody. And I ask them, "What do you think?" I ask everybody what the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. And if you don't know what SWOT analysis
Yeah.
is, you look at those areas, right? That's the first thing I do because if you don't ask that question of everybody involved in the organization, I say, and I go deep. I'm like, I don't care if they're a subcontractor or an employee. I want to talk to them. I just need 15 minutes of their time. That paints the picture then, because if you just talk to, and what a lot of, and this is the other reason I don't use the word coach, right? A lot of coaches or consultants do is they just talk to the CEO, and no offense to the CEO, but you just hear their perspective, right? And we know in business, it's multiple people's perspectives. So that's the first thing I look at, and then it's like, okay, then where do we go from there? What do we need to offboard? How do we restructure? What are you taking on that you shouldn't be doing? What's the goal too? Like, is the goal acquisition? Is the goal just, hey, like Mike, I did, and some businesses I just go in for 90 days. They're like, look, just clean it up a little bit. Like, I just need to make a little more money, and like you said, stay where I am and maybe have a little more time with my kids. Cool, let's do this, and this. Here you go. I'm out. Call me if you need me. You know. So I think it's just a matter of that. I will say this though, one thing I think that's really important to realize though, as a business owner, if you do want to scale and you do start handing things off, you have to be willing to become the teacher. And I think a lot of CEOs are the student, and they're always learning, they're always looking at videos, they're always studying online, and it's really hard to go from the student to the teacher. You don't need to be a leader, you need to be a teacher because you're transferring a skill in something that you do. And that's the first thing I say to the CEOs. What do you think you can teach people though? Okay, we're going to hand this off to Bob. How do we teach Bob or Jane or Jimmy or whoever? How do we teach them? And that's the harder part. That is sometimes the harder part. And I will say that's the hardest part of my job is taking a CEO and getting them to teach.
Yeah, that's always tough too. Usually, when you have a passion behind something, it's easy, but there might be some other things that take a little bit more learning in order to teach it effectively.
Sure.
That's good advice, though. So I'm curious. We started with your network is not your net worth, and now we're on delegation and offboarding of things you don't want. And how do we circle this conversation back around? What are the things that you would say to tie this together based on you're not leveraging your network effectively in order to scale your company?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing from a scalability standpoint is really look at where and who you're networking with. You know, are you in the right group? Are you around the right people? And that may be the toughest thing is be like, oh, wait a second, no, I'm not. Like maybe I'm in BNI and I've got an e-commerce business and and like I said, I love BNI. And the only reason I use them as the example, they only allow one person from one
Yeah.
industry in there. That may not be the right place for you. And if if you're always handing out leads and not getting anything back, that may be it. Or if you're not learning anything, right? So I always say the question is, am I around the right people that are helping me answer the questions that I need to grow? It's very simple, right? Right place, right questions. Am I growing? And that's the thing. And I think too, sometimes the hardest thing to do, if the answer is no to all those and you can't figure out where to go, sometimes you need to pull yourself out of it completely. If you really want to network and say, I'm going to network just to help other people. And don't even think about your business. Just say, I'm going to network to be the I got a guy, right? Or gal. I'm going to be that person that if somebody needs somebody, I want them to start to come to me and refer me to that. Because that, to be honest with you, is almost more powerful than any other business tactic, any other business idea. Because if people come to you and you become a source of knowledge and an outlet, I don't care whether you're selling pizza, whether you're doing what I do, you're an outsourced COO, you're a plumber. If people know they could come to you and you become a conduit for information, you become Google. That's way more powerful, I think, than actually that one-on-one exchange, you know? So I would say those are really the two key ways I would say to do it. If you really want to do it, is either ask those questions, am I in the right place? Am I asking the right questions? Am I growing? And if you can't figure that portion out, just be like, I'm going to network just to help other people.
That's amazing. I love that term too, because when you think about how we go to Google and what we trust, it's the people with the most, or the companies with the most reviews, those 5-star reviews. If you could become a physical representation of Google for your network, that you are going to become invaluable to those people, both parties, the one you're
Yep.
referring to and the one you are referring. I love that. So, Mike, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom here. This was an awesome episode. I love to end the episodes with a question for a question, which you kind of just gave me a really powerful one that you can definitely say, no, exactly what I just said, right people, right questions, right places. You can reiterate that one, but I want to know, what's the question you would want the listener to ask for the rest of today, the rest of the week, whatever it is, to help them get outside that box in their business and help them get started on getting to the next level. What is that powerful question that you want them to meditate on?
I would say, how can I help someone else today?
I love that. That's amazing. We don't start there enough as human beings, but also as business owners. We get so caught up in the day-to-day of what we're doing. And I think that's a really powerful question. So I appreciate that. I'm going to toss this on the screen too. And we'll put it in the show notes down below, all the details. But you have a book, and you're offering anyone who
Yep.
listens to this a free
There we go.
copy of the book. If you DM Mike the word podcast on Instagram, again, all the details in the show notes.
Yep.
Give me a little bit about this book. I love the title, Like Socks on a Rooster. What is this about?
Yeah, like Socks on the Rooster, it's a guide to busting the entrepreneurial cliches that are holding you back, which is kind of basically what you're doing here on the podcast, which I love. Like, your network is your net worth. I got a bunch of other ones in there. And it's really just a guide to that. And then how do you structure just what I talked about, your business and your time to be more effective, be able to grow. The title's kind of a nod to my father, something we always said when we were a kid, and the stories in the book as well. You can check that out. And my favorite chapter is I failed first grade. So those are all little cliffhangers for make you want to check out the book. So
I love it. I'm a huge fan. I hope you take Mike up on that offer wherever you're watching and listening. And also make sure you subscribe. Thanks for being a listener of Harmonious at Lunch. We bring this daily ridiculous podcast to you to help you get further ahead in your business, get outside of that rut, and get outside, Mike, the second worst place to be in business. That's what we're all about here. So, Mike, thanks for coming on.
thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And for those of you watching and listening, thank you. We'll see you on tomorrow's episode.